welcome to the Cardboard Herald podcast. I am Eric, joined this week by Nick Murray of Bitewing Games. Hello, how are you doing this evening?
I'm great. Thanks for having me, Eric.
Welcome in. So we are going to be doing a little bit of a different style podcast than we normally do because we have Nick on, and so we're going to be doing a little bit of an interview, which brings me to the introduction, which is this is a Cardboard Herald interview where we talk with creative gamers and game creators. This is a thing that Jack has been wanting to do for a bit, and I have as well, where we get some people who are in the industry to come chat with us. And I think that this is a great time because I've just got through playing through Gingham and Gazebo by Bitewing and enjoyed them quite a lot, as my review said. So thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm glad we could get you some preview copies. It was fun to watch your video and the intro as well. So, yeah, thanks for covering those games. That was awesome.
Of course. What have you played this week? That's generally what we start off with on the podcast, and I'm kind of interested with somebody who has like these games that have just been on Kickstarter. What have you been playing to get your mind off of the Kickstarter?
Well, I usually do game nights on Wednesday, but nobody was available. We were actually going to play, and this I don't do this super often, but we were actually going to play Silos because I got our like final production copy in of Silos from the factory, and the other two sci-fi games are supposed to arrive, I think Saturday or something. But yeah, nobody was available, so I've not played any games this week, but I did play games last week. It's been kind of busy with the Kickstarter launching and all that, so a little harder to get things played. But yeah, two games we've been enjoying lately, especially with my game groups. One of them being the new version. I've got show and tell here. The new version of Kalimala. So
You've been interested in that for a bit. I've read the blog post where you had that as like most anticipated game. Was it 2 years in a row?
Oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, it was supposed to. The Kickstarter was forever ago, right? In which it happens. Things take time to wrap up after a Kickstarter. And but yeah, it finally arrived a few weeks ago, and we got it to the table pretty quickly with my group. And it's funny because this is a game that I played like 4 years ago, the original version of. Mm-hmm. And at that time I was going over to, this is when we first moved to this area in Arizona, which is a major retirement community. If you look at the average age of my location, it's like 20 years higher than most towns. A lot of people like to come here to retire. So when we first moved here, it was hard to find people with similar interests, or even a lot of people roughly our age. So I did find through Board Game Geek, I found some local people who had, like, on their profiles, they had marked they're in the same city as me. And I reached out to them, and it turns out they're like quite aged. They're very retired, and they get together and play games. And I started playing games with these guys, and it was a lot of fun. I like them a lot, but they basically only play like very beige, very Euro-y, very point salad-y games, So I was doing that every week for a few years. This is a very long story to answer your question. I apologize.
No, this is great. No, this is what this is for.
Yeah, so just a great gang of folks that they get together like 1 or 2 times a week to play games, and but they always broke out the beige Euros, and Kalimala definitely fits in that category. At least the original version does. So by then I was like pretty burnt out on that type of game, and I got rid of my copy because I actually brought it and showed it to them because I was like, this is your guys' kind of game. Let's try it out. Mm-hmm. And then I culled it, but it always stuck with me. I was like, man, it's actually a pretty interesting game. I should really play it more, but I was just tired of that style of game. So when Alley Cat announced an Ian O'Toole version, I'm like, yes, this is perfect. This is the chance for me to jump in and really dig into this game again. So, and yeah, it's been a hit with my group, who is, I've found more gamers here, a variety of ages now and tastes, which has been good for my my gaming preferences. I'm not ageist. It's just that the game they like to play is very, very narrow. That original group. But
do they just hate, they hate bright colored games. like wingspan off the table.
They'll try stuff like that, and they'll enjoy it. Actually, it's more like the very interactive games. Like, okay, here's a story. I showed two of them. Quo Vadis, actually, Zoo Vadis before it was published. They were some of the first people to ever try Zoo Vadis, and it was hilarious because two of the guys who played with me, they didn't negotiate at all. Like, they didn't initiate any kind of deals or negotiation. They were playing it like a solitaire, like, I'm going to add a person, and then I'm going to add another person, and then I'm going to vote myself through. They were playing it like a straight, I don't know, abstract racing game without any kind of social negotiation. So I initiated all the negotiation for that game and made all the deals with them, and I ended up just crushing them in points because you're supposed to make deals to benefit others and yourself.
It sounds like they just didn't, didn't quite get it. But they tried. I think that it's really fun to imagine them just being like, okay, but if I can just get one more lion here, I can jump all the way to the top. No negotiations needed.
Yeah, they were a little too focused on like, I'm going to help myself only get to the end, and not so much on like, oh, I can actually get points if we work together, you know? So it was a rather funny experience with Zoo Vadis. But anyways, yeah, new version of Kalimala is really fantastic. I think Ian O'Toole and the team over at Alley Cat did a great job on that game. It's very interactive. The cool thing about this game is you place your workers between two actions and you get to do both. But your workers stay there as these tiles, and other people can come to the same spot and stack on top of yours, and then they do the two actions, but then everybody underneath them, they get reactivated. So they get to do the actions again.
Oh, cool.
And it becomes this really interactive game of shared incentives where it's like you try to talk people into like, oh, come to this spot and we'll help each other out, and then maybe I'll go to your spot next. And stuff like that is a lot of fun. And then basically it's all these little area control mini games that are popping off, and the players dictate the pace at which those score, because when a stack between two action spaces gets too tall, then the bottom player's worker gets kicked out, and it triggers the next area control mechanism, or the next scoring rather. And so sometimes you're like, I really want to go to this spot, but I don't want to trigger the scoring next. And so now I have to find a different spot to go, and it's great. It's been a big hit with my group, and we've played it 2 weeks in a row, which can be rare for my game nights. Sometimes we get a little too all over the place with our picks, but that's been my number one game. Another one, just real briefly, that I've been playing lately is Tic Tac Trek. This is also. You know what? I didn't even realize this, but this is also from Alley Cat. It's just going to sound like I'm a fanboy of them, but they put out a couple solid releases lately. But this is from from Brett J. Gilbert and Trevor Benjamin, that design duo. They've also done Mandala, Great Plains, Patterns. They've done a lot of really excellent 2-player abstract strategy games. I think they're two of the best designers in that category currently working. And so they made this really simple, very quick filler inspired by tic-tac-toe, where you just take turns drawing a terrain tile from the bag and essentially placing them next to another tile of the matching terrain type. And if I'm the X's and you're the O's, then when I put out tiles, they're X's, and when you put them out, they're O's, and you're trying to get 3 in a row to score points. And when you get 3 in a row, you put out a campfire, but your campfires only score points for the empty spaces around them. So it's like,
whoa.
Yeah, you tee yourself up to make 3 in a row, and then whichever last one you place, you get a campfire there, and then you don't want to go next to that because you're taking away points, and you don't want your opponent to go next to that, but they definitely want to cover up those empty spaces around your campfire, because then it just reduces your scoring at the end of the game. So it's a deviously simple but surprisingly clever game with some good strategic depth to it. I've played it with my wife and with my 6-year-olds a few times, and like the more I play it, the more I want to keep playing it, because I realize like, oh, this would have been a good move to do, and that's cool to find in a very small filler game. So
yeah, that sounds like a really interesting concept. I mean, that just sounds like a really interesting because you have to make the lines, but you can't get to get that line as far away from everybody else as possible, which I'm intrigued. I am intrigued by that. And it's funny that it's called Tic Tac Trek, which is now no longer near what Bombastic's title is.
Yeah, it's weird. There's like this renaissance of tic-tac-toe games going on lately. I've seen other stuff that like the Dice Towers cover too, but yeah, it's okay. It's a very different feeling game from ours, so I'm not like, shoot, they beat us to the market. But no, really, really great little game. The thing I like about Brett and Trevor's design style is they are all about making games as like pure and simple and intuitive as possible, just like cutting out all the rules and just leaving this very clean but like layered strategic game. And yeah, it's when you start playing this, eventually you start counting like how many terrain tiles of this type are left. Okay, that informs me I should probably go here instead of here. And I don't know, you just start, the more you play it, the more you realize there's good moves to be made, which is nice.
The strategy develops over time. Rad. I've obviously been playing Gazebo and Gingham. I've been getting quite a lot of plays of those, especially with, we just had a friend visit town who, this is like the exact like complexity level that she's in for, which is like simple to play but then just has depth. We also got some harmonies played, and then we got Things and Rings played, which is from All Play, which that was my first time playing it since I played it once at PAX Unplugged and just did so awfully. Like I was playing with like 4 or 5 other people and just had no clue what was going on the entire time. So it was good to play it again. It was much better now that I feel like I actually get the rules, or not necessarily the rules, but just like what the outcomes could possibly be.
Yeah, I really like Things and Rings. It's an interesting party game, but it's funny because I've seen both ends. It seems like people either love it or they're just like deer in the headlights, just completely over their head. They're like, I have no clue what's going on. So there are people in my group who are like, I showed it to, and maybe I threw them a little bit too far into the deep end as far as the clue cards go, because the rules of each ring, they have varying levels of difficulty as far as, how hard are they to deduce, right? And I think if you throw people too far in the deep end where they can't figure out what the rules could possibly be, then they're just clueless the whole game. And now those people don't ever want to play Things and Rings with me again. But I think it's a hoot. I think it's a really good party game, and I love the Dr. Seuss art style to it.
Yeah, so. I mean, to me, that is one of the biggest selling points. Is they nailed the art style. Like everything feels so cohesive and just funny and silly. I got the like pop culture expansion pack thing. So just seeing all the like jigsaw doll in the Dr. Seuss art style, cool. I'm here for it.
So good.
It's been rad. But why we brought you on, Gazebo and Gingham. I've been playing those a lot. I posted the review for them. The Kickstarter launched this week, and me as well as I'm sure the viewers are kind of just interested in, especially from your end, what goes into getting this Kickstarter put together, and also with these games specifically, what were your roles in developing the games from start to launch of the Kickstarter now?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, this project started out over a year ago at this point. It was actually a pretty quick turnaround on our end. I'd say most projects take us like a year and a half to 2 years from when we sign them to when they're on Kickstarter, and a lot of that's like waiting for the artists to be available, and then them doing the artwork for several months, and then getting the preview copies ready and such. But this one in particular started with Gingham. Actually, that was the first game that we signed for this project, and at the time, I'd actually played it quite a bit with Robert before then. Robert kind of came onto the scene with our jazz collection because we signed Bebop and Shuffle and Swing with him, and he really came onto our radar because we do a lot with Reiner Knizia, obviously.
Yeah.
We like that style of like interactive strategy game on a shared board with not too complex of rules. And it turns out that Robert does a very similar style of design, and that's a good fit for our audience that we've built up. So Robert, he involves us pretty heavily with any new game that he's designing, even if it's not something that we're planning to sign or it's not our type of game. Like we've become good friends with him. And when he was working on Gingham early on, we all thought it had like a really interesting, cool concept, but it never really quite was there as far as like, oh, this game is a banger every time. I absolutely love it. But then he kept working on it for several more months, and he pitched it to a couple other publishers. But then I think at one point he came up with the final couple rules for the game. I think it was the chocolate board ability and those things. And then how the scoring works out and kind of the objective. When those all came together and I tried it again a few months later, it was like, oh, this game is awesome. It was instantly one that was like, shoot, I want to sign this. You know, I don't want some other publisher to take this one. So we signed that, and then we initially figured like, oh, we'll probably just launch it in 2025 with maybe with another game. It'll probably be in a spectral sized box, you know, which it still is pretty much a spectral sized box, the compact. But that was basically where we left off with that. There was no really concept of the travel line. But what happened was after the Jazz Kickstarter happened, which I'm really proud of those games. I think they're really fantastic. But it was just interesting to observe, like, okay, this is our most expensive Kickstarter yet. This is before the Cosmic Trilogy that we did later in the year. and they're bigger boxes. They're more expensive games. They're more complex games. And that Kickstarter didn't do quite as well. It did fine. It was plenty successful. But, after seeing how that Kickstarter played out, I really got the impression we should try to focus more on more compact, like simpler, easier, and definitely more affordable games, and then kind of a more consistent or stronger brand or line of games, just to establish a little bit of a stronger identity for people who enjoy our types of games. Because up to that point, we've just been like all over the place. It's like spectral deduction game and like Zuvada's Negotiation and like casual card games with the criminal caper stuff we did initially. And from a publisher standpoint, it's a lot of fun to do a wide variety because it never gets boring. It's like the next project is something totally different from the last, and it keeps you on your toes, right? But from a business standpoint, from a branding standpoint, it's a little bit harder for your audience to like have something consistent to grasp onto or to understand, like what is a Bitewing game, right? And so then that's where we kind of took a step back and looked at like, okay, there are other companies who have like really strong lines or brands of games. What's something that we can do that's unique but also Bitewing? And we looked at the Trailblazers line of games, and that kind of provided some inspiration. So if you're familiar with Trailblazers, we published it a few years ago, and it's still been in print. It's been doing really well for us, but we have 5 different editions that we put out over the years, which gets a little confusing. But what we found was one of the most popular versions was kind of right in the middle between like really tiny cheap game and really big deluxe box, and that is the Trailblazers Travel Edition here. So this
when I think of Trailblazers, that's the one I think of, just because that's the one that Jack introduced me to, and this is when we were both living in Alaska, and I saw that and just was so into the concept of the game, as well as like, oh, I can take this on a hike so easily. I think that to me that makes sense, that's the one that has done well, especially for that game. The branding of it just works really well with that form factor.
Yeah, it all came together really nicely for us because it's like the carabiner, the clamshell case and carabiner clipped onto a hiking backpack, and then just showing like it's a very visual, easy to grasp game. It's like, it's a route building game. You're building trails that people hike or kayak on or whatever. And Yeah, I call this our unicorn Kickstarter project because we went from like, how many was it? 500. We went from about 500 backers in our very first project ever. That was the Criminal Capers, like casual Knizia card game collection.
Yeah.
That's a lot of alliteration. But we went from that with 500 backers to our second project was Trailblazers with 5,000 backers. And we've never had that many backers in a project since. And what's funny is like, if you go to Board Game Geek, we have other games that have released since Trailblazers that still have more ratings and more people who mark it as owned than Trailblazers. And to me, that indicates like this particular game reached an audience outside of Board Game Geek. And I think it was just the simple, like very clear picture of like, it's a hiking game that you can take hiking. And obviously nobody's really, setting this up along the trail or atop a mountain to play. Although a couple Instagrammers have, I should say nobody, but usually you're playing it on a table because it really needs a table to be played, or a large flat surface. And but the message was very strong with that, and the case was very unique. And so that was kind of us looking at, okay, what kind of line should we start? And that's when I realized, maybe a travel line would be the way to go. And, it doesn't just have to be a super small case and carabiner. We can do different sizes. What if we did like a medium-sized game in a very compact box? And that's where we realized like, oh, Gingham would be a good fit, but it would be nice to like really kick off this line with a couple games. And then that's where Reiner Knizia's Chin came in as an idea, which I'll show you real quick. This was a game that up to this point, any old Knizia game that we've dug up and brought back with him, is a game that I already loved. I've played over 200 of his games now, and so I've found a lot of hidden gems that just either the publisher didn't have a wide reach, or there were problems with the production or the game that just kept it from being even more successful. And so kind of finding those hidden gems has become one of our talents at Bitewing Games, I suppose. But what's interesting about Chin is I played this and I was just like, it's fine. I mean, my biggest complaint, and you can go back and look at my blog post about it, was like, it's such a this is a big box game that provides a very filler, 30 minutes lighter tactical type of experience. So it sets the expectation of like, this is a huge strategy game. And then it feels like a totally different game when you actually get it to the table. And that's where we realized like, there's not very many components in this game and they're all just humongous. Like the dominoes are just big old chunky boys. And so it's like we can trim this down and fit it into something much smaller. And then that's where the travel line really kind of started to come together. It was like, okay, what if it's this size instead of this size, right? There we go.
I think this is a great size for it.
So yeah, I mean the dominoes are much smaller, the map's much smaller, but when you're playing it doesn't feel too small, right?
No,
it's kind of
it feels right. Like it does feel. I haven't played Chin, so I guess I don't have the exact frame of reference there, but this feels right. Like this feels exactly like the level of gameplay I'm getting matches the box, and also it doesn't feel like it has been like you've done a trade-off to make the game smaller. And I also quite love there are some games out there that just have like boxes that are way too big for what they are. There's no need. I mean, Jack and I have talked previously on this podcast about Splendor being like a bad offender with this. And like, we love that game. We're a fan of Splendor, but it is just, there's no need. But, I agree. I think Gazebo feels like a really good, first of all, feels great to play. The dominoes are really nice, and it's the actual tactile feeling of playing on the cloth map is really fun. And I agree that this doesn't feel like you've reduced the size of it to a point that it is like, I feel in a good spot from the giant box of Chin, and you're still getting the full gameplay experience from what you're saying, at least.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm glad we were able to kind of figure out the sizing thing, but it wasn't just like, oh, this would be a good portable game. It was like, well, I think this game is okay, but I really wish it would be amazing, or like
Mm-hmm.
much better. So like we do with our other Crown Jewel games, I went to Reiner with a full analysis, and I gave him a rundown. Basically what I do is I go on Board Game Geek, I look at all the comments, all the reviews, all the forums, and assemble this analysis of like, here are the strengths of the game, here are the weaknesses, and here are some ideas for how we think we can improve upon this, and here's what we suggest you do with development. And the main complaints people had with Chin were like, it's a little too swingy. All the dominoes are mixed together, the single color and the double color, and one is much more powerful than the other. So if you draw way more of one, then you have a huge advantage. And so he addressed that with a really I thought was a very clever solution because it makes it strategic instead of lucky. And then the other thing was there were 4 maps originally for Chin, 2 of them being an expansion that I noticed a lot of Knizia fans really wanted to find these maps. They loved the variety of the maps. But what's interesting about the Chin maps is it's just a different arrangement of like starting spaces and obstacles. And so it feels a little different, but it doesn't feel incredibly different from one map to the next.
Yeah.
And so what I encouraged Reiner to do there was like, hey, why don't we introduce like new gameplay mechanisms with each map and make them really feel like different and interesting and fun to jump around between, and then introduce maybe even more interaction with some and maybe more combos with another and things like that. So like Reiner often does, he took our analysis and our feedback and he ran with it, and he came back with a game that is much more fun in my opinion, or at least for my taste. Like I really love playing Gazebo, and yeah, I'm really happy with everything he did there. So that was essentially how these games came to life. And then the last thing that brought it together really was hiring Alicia Giroux, who did Cat Blues, the big gig for us. She is an illustrator and a graphic designer, so she just seemed like a really good fit for this whole travel line. She's done a lot of, if you look at her website, she's done a lot of outdoorsy stuff. She's done bookmarks and stickers with a lot of like wildlife and nature type stuff on it. And the travel line has a very outdoorsy vibe to it. So she ended up being a great fit. She did the travel cases, the games, the illustrations, the graphic design, the rule books, everything. And she did a really killer job. So I'm happy we went with her there.
Yeah, totally. And kind of just speaking on Reiner Knizia, Bitewing clearly has like a really good relationship with him between like, Cascadero and Cascadito, the Mythos line, the Crown Jewel selection. I guess how did that happen? Because he is like, he's been doing this for so long and like is such a prolific designer to then like with Bitewing, which is definitely a smaller designer or a smaller publisher, especially when you first got working with him. How did that all happen, and how have you been able to like keep that relationship going?
Yeah, it was funny. When we first started, I had a couple of my own designs that we thought, yeah, these are strong enough and it'd be fun to kind of just self-publish these games, but nobody knows who we are. Nobody trusts our games or is going to be excited about what we're putting out because they just have no clue what to expect from us. And so that's where I originally just emailed Reiner Knizia out of the blue. Luckily, he's pretty unique compared to most game designers. Most designers will make maybe a small handful of designs per year or less, and then they're going to try to pitch them to the very best fit, or if they're established, to publishers that they enjoy working with. If you're making less games, you don't want to give your babies to no-name dentists who have never published a board game in their life, But that's basically what I did with Reiner. Is I reached out to him and said, "Hey, we're two dentists. We're looking to start a publishing company, and we love your style of game. Do you have some small card games we could potentially look at and see if any might be a good fit for us to publish?" And of course, Reiner, he has over 800 published games and plenty more that have never been published. Okay. So, and then a lot of those published games have been out of print for years or decades. So he has plenty to show to anyone who goes to him and asks. What's funny is I found out later listening to a podcast interview he did around that same time was like and I figured out the timing. The week before I emailed him, he went to this new to him dentist in Germany, which he ended up talking about on this podcast, and saying like, "Oh, this dentist really impressed me." And I asked him, "How are you so relaxed?" And most doctors I see are in such a rush. And I don't know, whatever. This dentist just left a really good impression on him. And then next thing you know, two dentists want to work with him. So I feel blessed in that way as far as the timing goes. But maybe that gave us a good initial impression. But
did you ever find out who that dentist was to send like a thank you card?
I should send him our games or something.
Yeah,
right?
that could be. That's be like a fun compensation. That's very helpful to have gotten like a really good foot in the door through a obscure way.
Yeah, it's a really weird story, but I think what really has helped is Reiner found me for whatever reason to be rather professional with the way that we like presented our ideas to him and met with him and communicated with him and stuff. And so that left a good impression, and then the games went well. But really, I think the big thing is like, because I've played over 200 Knizia games at this point, I kind of understand what his intention is with the design, and what his target audience is and what he's trying to do with the game, and where are the points that he's trying to nourish and really like bring out in an experience. And so when I make suggestions to him of like, hey, we should try this, usually he's on board with addressing those issues or those ideas and taking them and running with them. So we've really kind of found a really good collaborative niche where, especially with these older games, but I do it with new games he pitches to us too, of just like playing them, evaluating them, and then giving him feedback based on what people are saying or what we think people will say, and then ending up with an even better result. And so, we love his style of game, and he's still putting up with us. So here we are publishing another Knizia game. So
yeah, I mean, clearly it's working. I think everybody in the board game industry is benefiting from this relationship. So thank you for being a dentist, and that other guy for also being a dentist who sent him your way. And so Gazebo and Gingham are on Kickstarter now. You passed the goal in like an hour, something like that, less than something around there. So that,
yeah,
from the outside, that looks really great. I was wondering if you could talk about, from the back end of setting up this Kickstarter, what work went into setting this project up for success, and also at this point, do you already consider the Kickstarter successful, or are you looking for? Is there like a number that you would really enjoy hitting, and that would be like the cutoff of, okay, now all of this work has been worth. Well, clearly the work has probably already been worth it because the games are really great, but for the Kickstarter portion of it.
Yeah, I mean, there's different tiers of success, right? I think, say our funding goal was $15,000. Say we made $15,001. That would be considered, it was a funding success, right? The hard thing about only raising that amount is we would be using funds that we've made from retail sales, like kind of our spare cash funds that we have in the business, to hit the minimum order quantity with that and the 15,000 that we raised. And then we would be printing the bare minimum of games, like just enough to meet demand, and then maybe a few spares for retail afterwards. Whereas, our goal with any Kickstarter is not just to make it a one and done and move on to the next games. We want these games to thrive and continue finding an audience for years. And part of that is like printing, with the first print run, printing a lot of extra copies that we can bring to our web store afterwards, that we can bring to Amazon, that we can bring to retailers worldwide, so that they can, other people can find the games later as well, especially as reviews come out and people start talking about the games, or somebody plays it with their friends and then they want to pick up a copy, that kind of thing. So, right now we're at around 70 to 80,000, I think, which is great. That just lets us increase our print run size beyond the backer count that we need to fulfill, right? And I think generally for us over at Bitewing, if we're going past like 140, 150,000, then that's a really good success for us, because we can print usually twice as many games, sometimes 2.5 times, or if we're feeling really ambitious, like 3 times as many games as we need for the Kickstarter. And then those are meant for after fulfillment sales, right? So yeah, no, I'm feeling really good about where this campaign is at. It's headed in the right direction. I mean, honestly, it was hard to know for sure how things were going to look for this particular campaign, because there's a lot of comments online of people who are saying, I'm not backing any Kickstarters right now because of tariffs and all that. And I understand that. There's a lot of fear as far as like, will these games even be made and delivered? What's going to change with tariffs, or with, the relationship between China and the US between now and when fulfillment happens? And are my games even going to make it to me, or is it going to be way more expensive? I get all that. So people are being more conservative. So, I figured, from a marketing standpoint, like, this is a really strong Kickstarter for us, but from an economic situation standpoint, it's not ideal. So I'm really happy with where we're at right now. Yeah. Honestly, it's actually, as far as the number of backers we have, it's on par with our last Kickstarter, the Cosmic Silos trilogy currently. And I'm sure it would have been better if tariffs weren't a thing, but we'll take it, but yeah. Yeah, but as far as like what goes into prepping this, I mean, the big thing for this campaign was getting the message across that these are very portable, very easy to pack around and take wherever type games. And some people, I think, take it a little too far, where they're like, I can't play this on a cliffside, things are going to blow off, or like, stuff like that. Or I can't play this in my tent, but the real intention of our travel line for most of the games is that you can just easily toss it in a bag or clip it onto a bag, and it takes up very little space. You don't have to worry about the box or the components getting thrashed in your suitcase or whatever. It's very carefree, and then you bust that out and you set it up, you teach it and play it all in like 30 minutes, and then it's packed up and you're done. And so it's just very, very easy to get to the table with a wide variety of gamers. And I think a huge part of communicating that is just the photos and the videos that Kyle has done. He's the other co-founder of Bitewing Games, and he's very good with photography and videography and editing and stuff. So just communicating, like, exaggerating a little bit, right? Like laying out the games on the grass like a picnic almost, and then taking a photo just to communicate that message of like, yeah, these are portable games, and they're outdoor travel themed. And I think one picture or one video can communicate a lot better than what I can say in text in the description of the campaign page or whatever. So
yeah, totally.
I think he did a really excellent job setting that up, and really just showcasing the excellent artwork and the cool gameplay that our creators have provided here. So
yeah, totally. I mean, I think that I think these games kind of nail that niche where I can throw this in a suitcase and not have any concerns. I have definitely brought games home for me that I'm like, I think my family might like this, and then it's just been box has been dinged and dented. So yeah, rad. Enjoy it. And I think that the Kickstarter just does so much for, like, even just this first still of the 2 games on like a picnic blanket or like with a picnic basket, just gives such a nice like focused, this is what these games are for. So I can tell clearly a lot of work has gone into it, and I'm happy that despite the tariffs, this seems to be going well, which I feel like is a really good segue into, you made what I think is like a really great post about tariffs and kind of what they're going to do for board game publishers, and I'll link to it in our video description, just because I think that pretty much anybody interested in the board game industry should take a look at it. I know that there's been a ton of different discourse going into it, but I think this does like a really nice job of both showing different ways that publishers have to approach these issues. With again, we just have to kind of approach them at the moment as if this is where the tariffs are going to be, because we can't really prepare for how quickly they're changing. So given the numbers we have, how are publishers going to approach it? I think that I would be interested in, clearly there's a lot of reasons why you could have made the thought of this is something that I just need to put out there. But what sparked you to write that post?
Yeah, there was a lot of hysteria that particular week.
Yes.
Going on, understandably so. I mean, I'm if you talk to any publishers or myself, it's like ever since this started, for a lot of us, our anxiety and our depression and like, all those emotions kind of gone through the roof and been like a major roller coaster that hasn't felt like it's let up for a long time now, because it's just very impactful to the board game industry and to people who work in it as well. But what happened was that particular week, there was this new White House post, and it was like a fact sheet that went up late one night, and I saw it that night, and I thought it was I believed the rumor that quickly spread from it as well, until I saw somebody comment on it somewhere on Reddit, I think, and realized, oh, actually this isn't true. But basically the fact sheet says that tariffs on China will be up to 245%. And at the time it was only 145. So I saw that and I was like, oh geez, like the cost just the tariff cost just went and almost doubled again on us. And like, so what I realized was they were saying up to about syringes and needles in particular, which had a tariff on them before this whole tariff war started. Before this year even, there was a 100% tariff on syringes and needles from China for whatever reason. I feel like I should know that because I'm also a dentist, in the medical field, and I use those things, but I don't know why. But so the up to 245, everybody saw that and thought like, oh, everything's 245% now. And then I wake up the next morning and knowing now that, okay, it's still 145 for most goods, including board games. But then I see on the board game subreddit, there's a post with like 4,000 upvotes saying tariffs are now 245%. And understandably, everybody commenting in that subreddit is like, okay, well, the board game industry is dead. That's the end. And this is like a bad, as somebody who is less than a week away from launching a board game on Kickstarter, this is a really bad rumor and a very bad mood and vibe to have spread around the entire industry. And I realized, I can definitely do something about this. I post a lot on Reddit with whether it's just impressions of board games or like top 10 lists or whatever. And so people who are regular on there kind of know me. And so that day I was working all day at the dental office, but between seeing patients, I was typing up this post, mostly to clear up that rumor, but also to like really give people a bigger picture. Because there's also, we're seeing companies that are going under, they're going bankrupt. We're seeing companies that are laying off all their employees. And if you're seeing all of that in the 245 number, you're just thinking like, this is the end. Like board games as we know it are dead, or at least new releases. We still have, these aren't going to erupt in flames, thankfully. And we still have plenty of games to enjoy.
They're working on that though.
Yeah, they'll find a way. But all that going on, and I figured, you know what, I've talked to a lot of publishers, I've seen a lot of discussions, I've seen a lot of news, and I feel like I can give kind of a comprehensive overview that really paints a better picture of where the whole industry's at, and maybe will hopefully calm some people down in regards to like, hey, crowdfunding is still for a lot of publishers the best option because they're selling direct to customers, and it's still viable to navigate a publishing company and crowdfunding and making board games, even with these tariffs, because it's only happening in the US. And, anywhere else that we send a game, we're not getting tariffed into oblivion. So, and there's plenty of gamers outside the US. So things like that. And then, likewise, if you make cheaper games, then the tariff effect is reduced, right? It's all kind of scales downward. And so for us, with something like Gingham and Gazebo, these games aren't super expensive to produce. And then on top of that, our factory can split the invoice, and they can charge us for their services, which don't get tariffed, and they can charge us for the goods, which do get tariffed. And so you take a relatively cheap game, and then you split the invoice, and then you're only sending, in our case, about 40% of the games we make into the US, and the tariff burden is not nearly as bad as 100% of our games at full price or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So, just showing people like, hey, it's not the end of the world. For US backers who back our games, worst case scenario, we're going to have to charge you a few dollars extra per game. But our shipping rate is already $4 flat rate in the US, which is better than, unless somebody's offering free shipping. Most Kickstarter projects shipping to the US are charging like $12 to $20 or even more for shipping, right? So it's like, okay, worst case scenario, we might charge you the industry average of shipping just to cover tariffs in the US. And I feel like that's manageable from a backer standpoint. And it really helps us out from a publisher standpoint, because when you multiply, say, $8 or $10 by 2,000 backers, like that adds up pretty quickly, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah, it's doable, but it's not ideal, obviously.
Yeah. How much for Bitewing? How much? So 40% comes to the United States on average, roughly. What's the biggest market outside of the US for y'all?
The second biggest one goes to a warehouse in Germany who distributes and fulfills our backers, but then distributes to retail throughout Europe for us.
Gotcha.
But more recently, it's been interesting because Allplay has they're our partner. They do fulfillment and warehousing and customer service and things like that for us, and they've grown really rapidly, bringing on more partners beyond Bitewing Games. And they've done an excellent job, like setting themselves up as their own distributor with these kind of regional fulfillment partners and with retailers and such. So we've had like a distributor in Germany ordering like 500 copies of a game for our latest print run kind of thing, which if you're only printing like 3,000 games or 6,000 games, like that's a sizable chunk of the games you just printed are immediately sold into distribution in Europe, which is awesome. Like that's really helpful for us. So yeah, Europe is a huge market. And then the UK and Australia and Canada are probably the other three big ones. And then, it gets smaller from there, like Asia and Africa and things like that. But
yeah, totally. Yeah. Back to the post. I just think, especially Bitewing Games being the size that you are in the industry and where like the proven track record y'all have, I think the post was really enlightening, both on why some companies are going to struggle more than others, and also what levers all of the different publishers have. With all of the factors you talked about in your post, what do you see the board game industry looking like a year from now from like a publisher's point of view?
Yeah, it's interesting because the board game industry, it takes a long time to pivot, right? Compared to other industries, because of all those things we talked about, just bringing this campaign to life, right? Like there's the artwork, there's the development and the design work, and then planning out the project, and then making samples, and then mass producing. So it seems like publishers are definitely gravitating towards less games, for one thing, and trying to, instead of investing in new games, they're going to try to reprint or support their strongest titles. just because it's less risky, right? To keep supporting a popular game with expansions or spin-offs or whatever, which I think is a little bit unfortunate from like a creative and variety standpoint, right? But it is what it is, you know. And then also smaller and cheaper games for sure. Because like I said, the tariff impact is significantly less if you're making a game that costs $3 to manufacture versus a game that costs $10 to manufacture, right? So I think you're going to see a lot less of those big box, even like $50-$60 games, which aren't huge box games, but you know, medium or heavyweight games. I think you'll see less of those. And then outside of that, yeah, just publishers taking less risks and then trying to increase their direct sales, which is unfortunate for retailers and distributors, and then trying to reach more, grow their markets outside of the U.S., right? Just kind of grow their sales in ways where the tariffs aren't hitting them. So, but on the plus side, I think, and I've already seen some evidence of this, I think manufacturers, especially ones that are set up in China, are going to be looking for ways to reduce that burden on their partners, on their publishers.
Yeah.
And there are some factories saying like, oh, we do have the capability to produce in Vietnam, although it's very limited still. There's you know, certain equipment or types of components, like especially plastic, that you really can't make very well outside of China. But the nice thing is, at some point, like if you print the very needy components in China and then you ship them to another factory outside of China, and then that factory does the easier stuff like the box, the rule book, the assembly, then you can actually put on that box made in, you know, not China, basically. I don't know where exactly the line is when you've crossed from made in China to made in somewhere else, but I think some factories are going to try to just cross that line just barely. So that way they're getting tariffed on that country's rates instead of China's rates. But that's going to take longer to set up. You know, I don't think anyone's going to be able to build a factory out of thin air in even in like a couple of years. And by then, who knows what the tariff policy will be, right?
And I mean, I think that's the thing that I've been more confused by, which is just like, to build the factory needed to do this, like without having any leeway of like knowing that this is going to happen. It's like to get just the foundation to build the building is like 2 years until that is done and set, because you have to go figure out where you're building the factory, buy the land, and it's going to take a while for the board game industry to pivot. I think that's a great way of putting it. I think it's, I don't know. We're in a weird spot right now.
But I mean, if new factories are built outside of China, it's not going to be the U.S. No chance, because it's just too expensive. Like by the time somebody invests in all of that, the tariff policy will likely be gone, and then you've wasted all your money, because now it's still much cheaper to produce anywhere else. Like even right now with these tariffs, it's still cheaper to make games in China than it is almost anywhere else. The problem is it just really hurts the current, you know, distribution and pricing model and all of that. So that's why publishers are kind of in a panic at the moment.
Yeah, and I mean also just China has had such a long leeway of making themselves the industry standard for manufacturing, and there's just nowhere else that has the workers who are trained to do this kind of thing as to the highest quality that China has been able to do it. And that's going to be an issue kind of no matter where the manufacturing happens. So,
kind of going back to your question, a year from now, I think we'll definitely be in a better place than we are now, just because, you know, people will have time to adjust and kind of work around this issue, even if it doesn't go away. I think it will go down. You know, if you look at even from this week, the rumblings, it sounds like the CEOs of like Walmart and Target and those stores have actually met with the White House and told them like, hey, our shelves are going to be empty soon, and like our supply chains are going to implode, and then there's going to be a lot of unhappy people and a lot of very common necessities that are going to be out of stock because they rely on China, and this is going to really hurt our economy in a lot of ways. So, and I don't think, and it's not a popular policy that we have in place right now. And I just don't see this lasting forever. I think at some point it's going to have to calm down at least a bit. So yeah, a year from now, I think we'll definitely be in a better place, and the industry in general will be better equipped and kind of less reliance on the current situation. And so, yeah, that's where I think we'll be in a year.
Cool. Thanks for your thoughts. I appreciate those. Looking at the outlook, Stonemaier Games announced recently that they've joined a lawsuit to sue the current administration, the executive branch. The details on it aren't like out or anything, so I can't tell you or the audience what's going on with it. But I guess from a publisher's point of view, is that like, to me from the outside, that just seems like such a bombshell to drop. Of this seems like a very firm foot in the ground, we are drawing the line stance. Is it that crazy from your point of view?
I mean, I think the way Jamie worded it definitely got him a lot more clicks and views of saying like, I am suing the president, right? Yeah. And then from the sound of it, a lot of people took that personally, those who really support the president. But I think more generally, what's actually going on is there's a kind of a mass lawsuit where this firm has brought on a lot of clients saying like, hey, have you been affected? Your supply chain or your business been affected by these, out of thin air tariffs and been harmed by these policies. And then anybody who qualifies for that, and reaches out to the law firm, it's like, okay, we're going to add you as one of the many clients who are part of this mass lawsuit at the government in general. So I like it. I mean, if there's a chance for justice to recoup some of our losses, then I'm all about that. I read that post the same day Jamie shared it, and he said in his post like, hey, any publishers who are also affected, feel free to email me and I'll connect you with the lawsuit. So I actually did email Jamie, and he gave me their contact info, and I emailed them right away. But I don't know, it was weird. So I didn't hear from them initially, and so I emailed them again. And then it was like, oh, I'm out of office for a few days. Sorry. And then I just barely heard back from them. And they're like, oh, today was actually the day that we were finalizing it, so it's too late now. And I'm like, all right, okay, well. guess I'm not joining the battalion. But no, I think as a general principle, like, yeah, if you look at how these tariffs were implemented, it was very reckless and damaging for small businesses because it just came out of nowhere. There was no warning. There was no lead time of like, okay, in a year, or, we're going to start slowly ramping this up. Yeah. Nobody had time to adjust. And it's like a year ago, publishers were planning out, what are we going to print? How much are we going to print? How much are we going to invest? And now all their stock is sitting over in China waiting to be tariffed into oblivion. So it's like, you can't undo that. And all your cash flow is tied up in that stock, right? So it's like you were expecting those games to start selling soon, and then you'd have that cash to keep the business running. Well, now you don't have that unless you ship it over and then you pay that huge fee, or you leave it there and you hope things change so you can't ship it over. It's that's why you're seeing layoffs, and that's why I'm paying myself like less than $5 an hour to be an employee of Bitewing Games right now, just because we're trying to keep our cash as available as possible to help run the business and to potentially cover these tariff fees, so we can just survive, So I think it makes perfect sense that a lawsuit's happening, because it's only damaging right now small businesses, and then all of the industries and kind of businesses that rely on those businesses. So it has a ripple effect.
Totally. Yeah, and it's hard to make any plans based around it because it's all over the place, and it's maybe being done in a way that is detrimental to like everybody involved. So, you know, it's tough. So you are paying yourself less than $5 an hour. What does your day to day as a board game publisher look like with that $5 per hour, pay rate?
Oh man, it's a depressing. Yeah, I feel like I'm a slave to the government right now because they're like, when you think about it, our business is just 2 employees, but we're also the owners. So it's like, everything that the business earns goes into our expenses and our future investments, and we save some aside for emergencies like this. And then whatever little is left over, it's like, okay, we're going to split this up and pay ourselves. And so the first thing to go when we get hit with something big like this is our own salaries. And so yeah, that's a bummer. But luckily, I really love board games. And like I got into this not because of the huge financial prospect of becoming the next Hasbro or anything like that, which is most publishers, the margins are thin, or designers. You're not making the big bucks unless you make the next Magic or the next Code Names or whatever, basically. But I got into this because I love board games, and I love helping to bring some of my favorite games that I discover to life in a way that I think is awesome with artists that I love, or with art styles that appeal to me, and then sharing that with other people. So there's still definitely that inherent reward of bringing games to life. Mm-hmm. But I do, Bitewing has grown so much that this is, for me, a 40-hour a week or more job outside of my regular day job, which is currently only 20 hours, fortunately, of dentistry. And so, things aren't dire with my family. I have the money I need to pay the bills and stuff. But I mean, we're still having a fun time. I've talked to a couple artists and stuff that I was about to hire or have been working with recently, and they're like, "You're still going? Are we still doing this project?" I'm like, "Yeah, we're full speed ahead. Let's go." Because I think they've seen other publishers be like, "Yeah, we've canceled this game," or we're gonna delay this for months or whatever. Yeah. But on our end, we're still definitely able to operate, and we're here to make excellent games, and that's what I love most about being a publisher, and then sharing that with other people. And luckily, we have enough funding to keep that in motion, even if we're not necessarily rewarding ourselves for all the work that we do. So.
Well, the board game community is being rewarded for all of your hard work. So there's also that. You get the joy of smiling faces as people receive Gazebo and Gingham as their Christmas presents.
Yes.
All of those videos. I'm excited. You kind of to tie it all together, in your post mentioned doing direct to consumer has kind of been, to my knowledge, Bitewing's only distribution model for at least initially, where you are starting off with a Kickstarter. But then in a blog post recently, you talked about Bombastic, which, first of all, I want to say I like the concept of this game quite a lot, having not played it, but just the juxtaposition of it's tic-tac-toe but also Nana, which Nana has become. Jack brought it home from PAX Unplugged 2 years ago, and I have played Nana with so many different groups of people. I love that card game so much. But tic-tac-toe and Nana is not a pairing that I initially would have thought of as going well together. First of all, very excited for where this game goes.
Good.
But we'll
send you guys a review copy for sure.
Yeah,
so.
we'll have to get that. Jack and I will, I think, be very interested in that whenever it comes around. But I guess in the blog post, you also mentioned that this game was going to be the first direct to retail release for Bitewing. So I guess I was wondering, what about this game made you choose to kind of change your release model that you've had going for a bit?
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely less ideal with the tariff thing happening now, right? Because direct retail sales are a much lower profit for a publisher compared to Kickstarter or web store or stuff like that. But no, we're still going forward with it and excited about it. So yeah, part of the reason is Bitewing. If you look at from when we started publishing games up till now, we've been pumping them out, and part of the reason for that is like we just keep finding so many games that we're excited about and that we really want to bring to life, and we can only run so many Kickstarter projects in a year, and then on top of that, us joining Allplay, their model is very similar in that they do flat rate shipping for most regions of the world, meaning no matter how many games or products you buy, no matter how big the shipping box gets, it stays the same shipping price. And so there's a benefit to ordering multiple games at once. And so we've had this model of like, okay, let's kickstart 2 or 3 games together and then ship them out at a really good rate. And that's worked well for us, but there are downsides to like multi-game Kickstarters. When somebody goes to a Kickstarter and there's 2 or 3 games instead of 1, then they have 2 or 3 times as much, as many games to research and decide, do I want all of these games or just one of them or 2 of them? And so I think you lose people sometimes that way, and the messaging becomes harder to get across of like learning about all these games. So we've kind of felt and we've started to trend this direction that just doing less games per Kickstarter and kind of narrowing the focus a bit is going to be more helpful in the long run. But yeah, with Bombastic, it's interesting. This is a game that plays in 5 minutes, right? And the pitch is weird, right? Like, who gets excited about a tic-tac-toe game? Like, we've all played it, and there's not much to it, right? It's not that exciting. But this is a game where when you play it, it's over really quickly, and then you're like, oh, that was actually really interesting. Let's do it again, and it's like it's a funny game, and it's memorable, much like Nana, and people just want to run it back again and again and again. And so we saw this as an opportunity to kind of really try to seed this game as far and wide as we can in the market, in the retail market and stuff, and let the word of mouth kind of do the selling for us. That's the hope, because that's what happened with Nana, and which is now Trio, right? Is a lot of people have played it and said positive things about it and shared it with others, and that's why it's taken off so well. So yeah, for this particular game, what we realized is, maybe a year or 2 ago, we would have just added it to this current Travel Line Kickstarter and offered 3 games. But we realized, it's easier if we just narrow the focus of the Kickstarter so people can get into that and get through that easier. And then when the pledge manager opens up a few months later, that's when we can introduce this 3rd game. And people will have kind of more time and attention to put into learning about another game. And at that point, have a better idea if they want this additional game or not. So it's going to basically deliver and release and go through manufacturing at the exact same time as Gingham and Gazebo, but we're kind of just spreading it out and making it easier for people to digest all the news that we are spewing at them. So that's kind of the idea. We're also, this game's designed by Robert, who's the designer of Gingham. But I promised him, like, hey, we're going to send this game to more reviewers and more media people than any game we've ever sent, because it's really cheap to make. And we're going to make a lot of extra copies, and we're just going to spread this thing everywhere, because we really think it's fantastic. Like, this is a game that I've taken home to show my mom, who never plays games, and I was instantly playing with her, and we were like cracking up laughing about what was happening with it. Just like with Nana, kind of the point of the game sometimes is to kind of forget, what information you've seen, and then it becomes funny. And it's instead of being like, oh, I have a horrible memory and I suck at this game and everything feels bad, it's more like funny when things start switching around, and then you just start cracking up because you're like, I lost that bomb. Where is that bomb? You know, and it's a 5-minute game. It's not a big deal if you totally mess it up. You know, it becomes the point of the game really. And so yeah, I'm really excited about this. We're gonna definitely start doing this more often, where we kind of introduce a usually smaller, cheaper game during the Pledge Manager for folks to learn about at that point. And yeah, I expect we'll still get decent direct sales because the first people who can pre-order it are the people who are filling out the Pledge Manager, right?
Yeah.
And if you didn't back the Kickstarter, you can still go to our website directly, and there'll be a pre-order page there. But and then eventually it'll get to retailers and such. But yeah, I think it'll be a nice pivot for us, and it's lower risk because it's cheaper to make, 5,000 copies of Bombastic compared to 5,000 copies of Silos and hope you sell through those.
Yeah.
So it just makes sense to start with something very small, cheap, and simple, and see how it goes. So.
Yeah, and I think that that feeling of finding the game that your parents who hate games, like, it clicks with them, that's a good feeling. I know that feeling quite well.
Yeah. It's like most of my family and even like extended family, if you try to teach them a game, even for like 5 or 10 minutes, they're just like, oh, I'm so tired.
Yeah.
You've been talking at me for so long. Whereas this is a game that's like, okay, you have 4 X's, I have 4 O's. There's also 1 bomb. You need to line up 3 of yours in a row and then reveal them. And I taught the game in like 30 seconds, and we play it in 5 minutes, and everybody had a great time. So that's definitely where this game is targeting.
And I think that's great. I'm excited to see it come out. And I'm excited to see where else the travel line goes, because I really like these 2 entries. And yeah, I think it's great. We have one viewer question.
Cool.
Very, very important question from I must assume a long-time viewer who's like really followed the channel for a while. Their username is Robert Hivakamian.
Gosh. Yep.
Who has a question of what's it like being named Nick? Do you like it? Would you change it if you could? Did you know it's short for Nicholas?
Well, thank you, Robert, for your carefully considered question. What's it like being named Nick? It's not bad. I meet a lot of Nicks here and there, and we all get along. And it is short for Nicholas, but Nick is simple and easy, and yeah, it works for me.
Do you ever get I guess I haven't talked about this with other people who have names that you could in theory spell differently. So like, do you ever like get in arguments with Nicks who just spell it N-I-C? Because I have it with Eric's with ERIKs, and it is on site with them. I cannot stand them.
Yeah, I feel like that kind of spelling's a little bit disgusting. Although the way you spell Nicholas typically, and that's true for my name, is N-I-C-H. And then it goes on. But like, so where did the K come from, and why are you using?
Have you ever considered doing the H, N-I-C-H? That feels wrong.
Yeah, I think most people just butcher it. They'd say niche. And then
Nietzsche?
Yeah, that would be my Nietzsche. Yeah, added a little E at the end instead of niche. It's
or you could
Nietzsche.
do Nicho, like nacho.
Nicho. There we go. Yeah, that actually reminds me. This is a little bit off topic, but I think this is from How to Win Friends and Influence People. That book, I read it a long time ago, but basically they did this study that showed that people gravitate to, they naturally like things that sound like their name. So like, and this is funny because it's personal to me, but like people named Dennis were more likely to become dentists, and were more likely to like tennis, which those things are both my jam. My name's not Dennis, but yeah, stuff like that. And you think about that more, and it's like, that's interesting. People just like things that I guess remind them of themselves. And yeah, it was that book, because that book is about like, if you want to win friends, like just get them talking about themselves. People love themselves, and then they feel like they had a good experience with you by talking about themselves. But yeah, and I always thought that was interesting. Like, okay, what are some things that rhyme with or sound like Nick that I enjoy? And I don't know if I've thought of anything yet, but it's interesting to think about.
Now I'm thinking about it. I mean, the only thing that comes to mind for me is generic, but I don't think I do. I don't quite know where that would lead to.
Generic. You gravitate to generic things.
I just gravitate to generic things. Anything that just seems bland is my jam.
Lay's potato chips, vanilla ice cream.
I do like vanilla ice cream. Vanilla
too much of a
vanilla
stretch.
gets a bad rep. Vanilla gets
Vanilla's
this
great.
rep as like the boring flavor. I will stand for vanilla through the end of time. Vanilla is a good
It's
flavor.
versatile. You can do so much with vanilla, and on its own, it's fantastic. I agree. It's my 6-year-old's favorite flavor, so there's got to be some truth there.
I agree with your 6-year-old. There's also America. I've always known that, where it's like you can't spell America without Eric, which is like a fun one to drop. And I'm at this point probably trying to distance myself from that.
America's not too popular with anyone outside of America at the moment, it seems. But yeah, hopefully we, figure some things out.
My last name is Moots, so like Root. Maybe that's what this is all about.
Oh yeah,
maybe that's what this is all about.
You got all the expansions?
I don't. I've not kept up with it. I should. I like Root a lot. Well, I haven't had. Since moving out of Juneau, I haven't had like a really solid group that I feel like I can play Root with multiple times to like get into it. And even when I was in Juneau, I like didn't have like I had Jack, but he already had all of the expansions, so it was like, why should I why would I get the expansions? And so
sure,
I'll get them at some point or another. I have the ones I got the River Folk and Clockwork, so I have the ones that I'm gonna use regularly for the time being.
Yeah, I really like Cole Worley's design style, even though it's much more complex and intricate than anything we publish or put out. But yeah, I've really had to slow down on backing his latest stuff, because I'm still my expansion of Arcs is still in shrink wrap, and then like I have the the Marauders, the Root Marauders expansion with the moles and the badgers. I think I've only played that like twice, and it's been out for a couple of years now, and yeah, I'm in the same situation. Ever since moving to Arizona, just locally, there's not a lot of Cole Worley type players around here.
It's crazy that the old people who like beige games wouldn't be into Arcs. It's really weird. That's bizarre.
Yeah, I don't think that would go over too well with them. Yeah, I love that game, so it's a pity. So.
It is. Well, I'll say Jack's opinion is the base game without the expansion is the better experience. So you have people who would
That's fair.
who are in agreement on you that you can leave it in shrink wrap for a bit.
Yeah, it'd be nice to play it. I mean, that thing is humongous, and
it
sounds pretty wild, but it definitely will take the right setting and group to get set up. So
yeah, my opinion is it'll be worth your while. Much like the people who back Gazebo and Gingham, it'll be worth their while. And that'll kind of be my closing thoughts here. Thank you to the audience for tuning in, and obviously thank you, Nick, for coming on and chatting with us, or me, us, the royal us.
Yeah, we like to include the listeners in this. Even though they
listeners
don't chat back. I mean, the only communicator asked a really profound question.
Yeah,
but yeah, so there's definitely an us.
He did lead us on like a very cool discussion. So unintentionally, Robert, I think, did a good job guiding us here.
Credit to Robert. Just like he designs games, he starts with an idea that sounds really bad, like tic-tac-toe memory, and then he ends up surprising you with a memorable experience. So
he knew this entire time. He was playing 4D chess while we were playing checkers.
Classic Robert.
Well, thank you so much for listening. If you have any more comments or questions for Nick, feel free to comment them wherever you're listening to this podcast, either YouTube or Spotify, or email them into us at cardboardherald@gmail.com. We will pass them along and try to get you an answer to the best of our abilities. And if you have any other just general comments about the discussion today, feel free to leave those as well through those channels. Thank you so much for listening. Thanks for tuning in. I have been Eric with the Cardboard Herald, joined by Nick Murray of Bitewing Games.
Thank you.